thousands of people are killed and injured after a massive earthquake rocks Nepal. In Kenya, autistic children and their families lobby for better laws. And the man who was once known as the world's greatest athlete comes clean about his dramatic transformation. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening, I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. Tonight, we begin with the devastating earthquake in Nepal. International rescue crews and relief agencies are beginning to arrive in Nepal's capital, Kathmandu, 2 days after a massive quake rattled the country and the region, killing more than 3,600 people and injuring several thousand others. Voice of America's Steve Hammond is one of those journalists trying to get to Kathmandu. Because of the congestion caused by a number of military planes attempting to land at Kathmandu's airport, his plane could not land and was rerouted to Kolkata for refueling. Disaster response teams from various countries, including China and the United States, have deployed to the area to help search, rescue and recovery efforts.
Bringing search capability, digging capability, the ability to get people who are entombed in rubble, extricated from the rubble.
Residents of Kathmandu sought refuge outside overnight, fearful of further aftershocks after a massive 7.8 magnitude quake Saturday that struck 80 kilometers northwest of Kathmandu, destroying large parts of the capital's historic center.
I've been here for the past 3 years now. There is no arrangement whatsoever. Last night, there was rain. We were all getting drenched, including the children. We called authorities for help, and they kept saying, "We're coming in half an hour," but nobody came.
At least 180 people were reported dead when the city's iconic Darahara Tower, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, collapsed. Hospitals in Kathmandu area have been overwhelmed with many injured residents.
There are a lot of patients who have got devastating injuries, including head, scalping, de-scalping, as well as the amputations, whole of the limb amputations. The devastating injuries, including chest, badly disabled chest injuries.
Communication systems from rural areas have been knocked out by the earthquake. The death and injury tolls are expected to rise when word comes in from those areas.
It's unbelievably difficult. At the best of times, these villages are very hard to access. They are dirt roads that are only four-wheel drive accessible. They are used to multiple landslides each year, any of which can shut down a road straight away and leave a village completely isolated. These villages are literally perched on the sides of mountains and cliff faces.
To the east of Kathmandu, avalanches shook Mount Everest, the highest point on Earth, killing at least 18 climbers and burying entire base camps. Scores of people are also killed in India, while Bangladesh, Bhutan and elsewhere along the remote Nepal-Chinese border region report additional casualties. Saturday's earthquake was the strongest in 81 years in Nepal, when an even mightier jolt in 1934 killed more than 10,000 people. Well, as rescue and aid workers struggle to cope with the aftermath of the earthquake, the United Nations Children's Fund says at least 1 million children are in need of emergency assistance. Hundreds of thousands of Nepalese are sleeping out in tents or in the open. UNICEF also says its relief workers are watching for waterborne and infectious diseases. A spokesperson says badly needed aid is on the way.
We are preparing 2 cargo flights with 120 tons, mostly of medical equipment for hospitals and also medicines. So one flight is supposed to leave soon, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, from Copenhagen, and the second flight will leave from Dubai. Yes, in the coming days, but as soon as possible.
Well, UNICEF says in emergency situations like the Nepal earthquake, lots of surgery will be required for adults and children who become maimed under the rubble of destroyed buildings. Well, now turning to East Africa. In Burundi, police fired tear gas and water cannon at protesters in the capital on Monday, the second day of demonstrations against President Pierre Nkurunziza's decision to run for a third term. Critics say the move violates the country's constitution. Crowds gathered in Bujumbura burning tires in the streets and chanting the fight continues. Activists say at least 5 people were killed on Sunday, a day after Mr. Nkurunziza said he would run in the June 26th election, triggering the unrest in the East African nation. While Togo's President Faure Gnassingbe has an early lead in the first results from Saturday's presidential vote, results released on Monday from 6 of the 42 voting districts showed Gnassingbe will be with about 64% ahead of 33% for his nearest rival Jean-Pierre Fabre, according to the head of the Election Commission. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon praised Saturday's vote and called on the country's political leaders to continue to maintain the peaceful atmosphere of the election process. An observer from the regional bloc, ECOWAS, says there were no major incidents in the voting. President Gnassingbe is seeking a third 5-year term. Rights groups have criticized Togo for using violence against protesters. Well, now turning to the European migrant crisis, waves of migrants are continuing to arrive on the shores of southern Italy from North Africa. After their dangerous journey across the Mediterranean Sea, they face an unknown future in Europe. In the Sicilian city of Catania, there is an activist dedicated to helping the refugees on their journey. Henry Ridgwell has the story.
It is the number of children that is striking. There are babies just a few weeks old. These Syrians have fled civil war, and they've just spent up to 20 days at sea in an old fishing boat.
The migrants here at Catania station are exhausted. They've barely got off the boat after their arduous journey across the Mediterranean, and they're about to start the next leg of their journey north on the night train to Milan.
They bring with them tales of horror from Syria.
They bombed my house. My 4-month-old daughter was killed. A block of the ceiling fell on her. I have another 2 boys. I picked them up right then and fled.
There is at least a friendly face waiting in Catania. Nawal Soufi is a Moroccan-Italian woman known as the Angel of the Migrants. She and her friends distribute baby food and clothes, but also words of advice and encouragement. I love you all, you are my family, she says. God bless you and may you achieve your dreams. Soufi is part of a group of activists working along the migrant trail through Italy, known as La Rete, or the network. Part of their work is helping migrants avoid becoming the victims of conmen.
Today, for example, a group of conmen offered to drive them to the north for €500 each. I explained to the migrants that they have the right to take a train normally, even in front of the police.
Soufi explains why she is dedicated to helping the migrants.
So I can feel like a human being when I get home at night, so that I don't feel I'm a part of the tragedy. So I don't feel I have the blood of these people on my hands.
After setting off from North Africa, migrants often call Soufi from a satellite phone so she can alert the Coast Guard. It's earned her the nickname Lady SOS. Earlier this month, up to 900 migrants died when their boat sank off Libya. Soufi says Europe's inaction is an outrage.
Is it impossible that Europe cannot guarantee a humanitarian corridor and that each country takes a share of these migrants? We're considered democratic countries, where we know all about human rights. But perhaps now we know that that is only on paper, because 900 people is not just a number.
These migrants have survived that deadly journey. Now they face new fears and challenges. Nawal Soufi is on the platform, waving a Syrian flag to see them off, urging them to be strong. She will return tomorrow, ready to help the next wave of desperate migrants arriving on this corner of Europe's southern shores. Henry Ridgwell, for VOA News, Catania, Italy.
Now, following the recent attack by Al-Shabaab militants at Garissa University in northeastern Kenya, Kenyan authorities say they have started building a 700-kilometer wall along the entire length of the border with Somalia to keep out members of Al-Shabaab. Speaking to VOA, Somalia's Foreign Minister Abdul Salam Haldiye Omar says while it's within Kenya's right to build a wall, he does not think it is a great idea.
Question that may be pertinent to me is, would it solve the problem? because we in Somalia, we believe that the boundaries should be open. East Africa and the Horn of Africa should trade. People should crisscross and exchange cultures and exchange education. And we need the human resources of Kenya to come and help us rebuild Somalia.
Well, Mr. Aldir Omar says there should be stepped-up sharing of intelligence and surveillance among countries fighting militant groups such as Al-Shabaab. We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. Check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, raising awareness and demanding more support for Kenyan families coping with autism. Stay with us.
How do you see the world?
I see countries in turmoil.
I see our planet changing.
I see people at peace.
No matter how you see the world, you'll get an unbiased and uncensored view of it on Voice of America. On television, radio, online, and mobile. In more than 40 languages all day, every day. Millions of people tune us in.
How do I see the world? On Voice of America.
Wherever you are, Voice of America is on air, reaching more than 130 million weekly, worldwide, in more than 40 languages. Online, social media, and breaking news from around the world. On the go, dozens of new features on popular platforms with new apps and trending topics. Voice of America, on air, online, on the go.
Welcome back. A U.S. study indicates that 1 in 68 children worldwide is autistic. In Kenya, autistic children and their families are lobbying for better laws and support to overcome stigma and a lack of awareness. Lenia Ruvaga profiles one such family in Nairobi.
These are the Mayaras. Today, Grace Mayara is escorting her son, 23-year-old John Mayara, to work. John is autistic, a developmental disability that can cause significant social, communication, and behavioral challenges. Autospectrum disorder, ASD, affects 1 in 68 children worldwide, according to the United States Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC. In Kenya, statistics haven't been quantified on the number of those affected by the disability. John is one of the few autistic youths in Kenya who engage in gainful employment. He works at Karatasi Yahewa Safi, or Kahesa, which when translated means eco-friendly paper. 3 years ago, Simia Ahmadi began Kahesa with her personal savings of $12,000. Her staff makes handmade paper from banana bark and rice husks, which she then sells at exhibitions, schools, and trade fairs. On average, Kahesa makes approximately $500 a month, which is then used to pay the workers and buy materials. Ahmadi began Kahesa with the sole aim of generating income for young adults with mental challenges.
I hope that after 2015, they will be integrated into a regular professional field so that they are now included in the workforce and not isolated, because once they have the vocational training here, they should not stop at that. They must fly with their own wings afterwards.
Grace Mayara runs a cyber cafe in Nairobi. For 10 years, she struggled with the lack of awareness in how to manage autism. According to her, stigma is the biggest challenge that is yet to be overcome.
It's a hidden disability, so there's nothing to show that he has a disability. So there's a lot of stigma. There are others who think that the child is bewitched, kurogwa in our language, and which is not the case. It's a manageable disability if it is handled well.
James Karanja is the founder of the Autism Support Center Kenya. He notes that the government has neglected the plight of those with autism and should do more to reduce the stigma attached to autism.
We need increased funding to institutions that offer training for persons working with those on the autism spectrum. And these are the teachers, specialized teachers, medical personnel, we need therapists, and also bringing more awareness. So it's actually the government who should be at the forefront to bring more awareness so that the stigma and all these other issues affecting those with autism are reduced.
Although the Kenyan government cares for the disabled through the National Disability Fund, those with autism aren't looked after as closely as they should be. It is hoped that with more pressure from lobbying, the Kenyan government will accord ASD the strengthened policy and interventions it deserves. Lenny Ruvaga for VOA News, Nairobi, Kenya.
Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, a hotly anticipated interview, scores big confessions and big ratings. We'll be right back.
Les polices aujourd'hui, messieurs.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. The man who was once known as the world's greatest athlete gives a groundbreaking interview.
What I'm doing is going to do some good, and we're going to change the world. Well,
Olympic gold medalist and reality TV star Bruce Jenner's much-anticipated interview with ABC News delivered big ratings for the network. Almost 17 million viewers tuned in to watch Jenner confirm that he identifies as a woman. Following the interview, celebrities flooded Twitter with messages of support from the Kardashian sisters to Lady Gaga to Miley Cyrus to Russell Simmons. Bruce Jenner is the most high-profile American to come out as transgender. The E! Network plans this summer to air a reality show following Jenner's journey. Next up, players from politics and Hollywood gather for the Nerd Prom at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. The White House Correspondents Association dinner has become a celebrity magnet this year, drawing some big names from television, sports and movies to rub shoulders with the members of Congress and to hear the president speak. It has grown to become one of Washington's biggest events since its smaller origins in 1914 when journalists gathered to push for greater access to the president. Well, and finally, a surprise for fans of the hit show Grey's Anatomy. In a shocking twist, the beloved character Dr. Derek Shepherd, a.k.a. McDreamy, was killed off in last week's episode. The development is particularly surprising because Dempsey signed a 2-year contract extension last year that would have kept him on Grey's through a 12th season. Dempsey says the startling twist came about organically. And our showrunner, Shonda Rhimes, who is also the power behind the hit series Scandal, released a statement saying, "I absolutely never imagined saying goodbye to our McDreamy. Of course, fans are devastated." And that is what is trending today. Now, an exhibit that preserves important historical records of Nigerian art and culture recently opened at Washington's National Museum of African Art. VOA's Caroline Turner has more.
The exhibit, Chief Alonge, Photographer to the Royal Court of Benin, is on display at Washington's Museum of African Art. It showcases the work of Chief Solomon Osagie Alonge, Nigeria's first official photographer. Alonge's historic photographs document the rituals, pageantry, and regalia of the court for more than half a century and provide rare insight into the early history of photography in West Africa. The exhibit preserves an important historical record of Benin arts and culture, the periods of British colonial rule, and the transition to Nigerian independence during the 1950s and 60s. Alonge's photos reveal a historic visit by Queen Elizabeth in 1956, foreign dignitaries, political leaders, weddings, and celebrities such as the tennis prize winner captured in 1937. This self-portrait was done in 1942. His clothing and photo equipment was also on exhibit. He was called upon to take portraits at clubs and events. Photos detailed 16th to 17th century important metal pendants worn on the hips, which display a variety of images. A distinctive four-sided bell once placed on an ancestral altar in the royal palace. Chief Obamwani explains that the short écaillé coral beads can only be worn by royalty or recipients of a royal gift.
It's not worn by anybody that is not given to by the Oba. That is where it is very significant.
The exclusive coral hairdo can only be worn by the princess and royal court members.
Every other person who is outside the royal court does not wear this without the consent of the Oba.
Alonge's photos of royal images were printed on souvenirs and commemorative cloth, which was made into wearables for special events, which participants wore to show their affection. A baseball jersey boasts a photo of the king. Commemorative funeral cloth done by an Edo artist was on display.
Here we have a photograph of the Oba in his full regalia. We have the crossed swords, the emblem of the court.
Before photography was invented, history was recorded through bronze castings. The bronzes depict the Oba surrounded by aides, and the Oba is never alone. With his photographs, Chief Alonge replaced the bronze castings and recorded the entire history of the Benin Kingdom.
For us in the National Commission for Museum and Monument, there's a linkage between, as a museum where we keep objects and antiquities and preserve them and present them to the general public, photographs and digitized by the Commission and preserved for the general education of the people who visit our museums.
The exhibit continues through mid-September. Carolyn Turner, VOA News.
Well, at the annual South by Southwest Film and Music Festival in Austin, Texas, some musicians from Mali were on hand to promote a film about how their lives were upturned by jihadists who destroyed ancient treasures in the city of Timbuktu and prohibited anyone from playing music under threat of death. As VOA's Greg Flakers reports from Austin, some are afraid to return to their hometown, even though the jihadists are no longer in control there.
Music from around the world is heard all over Austin during South by Southwest, and many of the films shown are about music and musicians. But one film that premiered this year at the festival, They Will Have to Kill Us First, is about musicians in the West African nation of Mali who were driven into exile by jihadist rebels.
At an event that is largely dominated by music, it was especially shocking to hear this story about musicians whose very lives were threatened for playing music.
Although government forces, with substantial help from the French military, drove the jihadists out of northern Mali in 2013, they continue to carry out terrorist attacks on nightclubs and other civilian targets. One of the musicians on hand for the film's premiere, Omar Touré, says he cannot return to his hometown.
The situation in north of Mali is not stable.
He belongs to a group called Songhai Blues that now plays to large audiences in Europe and the United States and reaches fans everywhere with an online video. The documentary film came about when former BBC producer Johanna Schwartz, who loves West African music, heard about the jihadist threat to musicians in Mali in January 2012.
I thought it was one of the worst things I'd ever heard. So I just got on an airplane and I got my camera and I just went. I just thought, I want to tell the story. I think that everyone needs to know about this.
She says she operated alone with one local producer most of the time and that the people she met in Mali were gracious and helpful.
They were so eager to talk about what was going on because they knew that, you know, one of the ways to fight back against what was happening in their country was to spread the word and for as many people around the world as possible to know about it and to find out about it.
The title came from a woman singer who said if the jihadists want to stop musical performances in Mali, they will have to kill us first. And that is what the film is about, according to Schwartz.
And actually, it's quite an uplifting story at the end of the day, and I think that, you know, hopefully we achieve that in the film.
She says the best way for people to support the musicians of Mali is to buy their records and listen to their music. Greg Flakus, VOA News, Austin, Texas.
Well, the National Basketball Association announced it's playing its first ever game in Africa this summer. The exhibition will take place August 1st at Ellis Park Arena in Johannesburg, South Africa. South Sudan's Luol Deng, an all-star with the Miami Heat, will lead Team Africa against Team World, led by all-star Chris Paul of the Los Angeles Clippers. Now, former great Nigerian-born Hakeem Olajuwon and Dikembe Mutombo of Congo will also attend. The NBA says more than 35 African-born stars have played in the league since Olajuwon was drafted in 1984. The exhibition will benefit several charities, including the foundation of the late Nelson Mandela. Sonny will be back with us on Friday. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC. And in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching. From all of us in Washington, have a good night.
Welcome to the Voice of America's Newswords. This phrase is important when doing business with another country.
Exchange rate.
With regard to China, we've made very clear the importance of exchange rates being based on market-determined forces.
An exchange rate sets the value of money when it is traded between countries. It determines what your money is worth if you want to use it overseas. It is an important part of doing business because it can help companies decide whether they can buy or sell goods in other countries.
Now, when you hear the phrase exchange rate, your English will be good enough to know what these newswords mean. For more newswords, visit our website at learningenglish.voanews.com.